Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Carr has gotten the most criticism this year in New Orleans. From being booed by fans to a veteran wide receiver criticizing his play on Twitter during the game. But the fans loved Derek Carr this past game against the Giants, and head coach Dennis Allen clapped back at the media for being unfair to the quarterback.
I just think it's unfair, my personal opinion.
The Saints defense shut down the Italian sensation Tommy DeVito, and John Gruden, based on a Derek Carr post-game presser, may be more involved than we realize. The Saints offense is finally looking hot, and it really seems like this team could go all the way. All of that and more will be discussed. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me, Wi-Fi Willie. We know there's been some drama with the Saints. Even when they win games last week against the Carolina Panthers, there was a spat between Derek Carr and Eric McCoy about blocking, about picking up some of these blitzes. Obviously, this went viral all over social media and all over the NFL world. They had to answer questions about it. Dennis Allen got annoyed.
I'm glad that both of them have the balls to at least stand up and fight. You know what I mean? So, hell, my wife and I argue. You know, it happens. So let's don't make too much of it.
However, this time it was different. There was no fights between Derek Carr and other players. Instead, there were fights between Derek Carr and some defensive coaches on the New York Giants.
I had a feeling that they were going to have a good day. You could just feel that energy. You could feel that. And there was no fights today, so that was a good thing too. One of their coaches kept yelling at me, from their sideline. I was like, "But I don't know who you are, bro. Like, why are you talking to me?" I was like, "Who are you?" I don't even know you, So I did have one fight today, but it wasn't with a teammate, so.
The Giants coaches may have been frustrated because Derek Carr had a great game, throwing 3 touchdowns and only having 5 incompletions on the day. On the defensive side of the football, the New Orleans Saints, who have struggled against mobile quarterbacks and have struggled in terms of pass rushing, well, the Saints got 7 sacks on the day. The defense had fun mocking the Italian sensation Tommy DeVito, doing their own little celebration for Mr. Spicy a Meatball. I guess having an agent who looks like he was casted as an extra in an episode of The Sopranos is not enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL after all. Sorry, Tommy DeVito. On the flip side, despite the fact that this offense had 3 starters missing, no Michael Thomas because he's on injured reserve, and Chris Olave with an ankle injury was not active for this game. On top of that, you had Ryan Ramczyk, the right tackle, unable to start in this matchup for the New Orleans Saints. Keep in mind, Derek Carr is also nursing injuries. We know he has 3 fractures in his ribs. Yikes, that's gotta hurt. And he's been knocked out of several games throughout this season. So they got all these injuries in the background, all these starting players unavailable to play, and the Saints somehow, with Derek Carr at the helm, put together quite possibly their best offensive game. One man in particular who got it started off right was Keith Kirkwood, a guy who's been floating around with the Saints for quite some time. He was able to grab the first touchdown reception, and it was actually his first touchdown since 2018. I have been paying attention to this guy because I know he has a connection with Derek Carr. They talked about it back in preseason and in the offseason.
6 a.m. I'd be like, whoever wants to meet me there, I'll be there at 6 a.m. to, throw these new routes and these kind of things. And Keith was there every single time. I'm just really proud of him.
And when things were not going quite well with Mr. Chris Olave and Michael Thomas, I even suggested on this channel, get Keith Kirkwood in the mix. Maybe the Saints need to get somebody like Kirkwood who really wants to play. Start that guy. Start people who actually want to see the Saints make the playoffs, want to see the Saints be successful this year. It seems like the whole entire team, and Derek Carr included, were really happy to see him find some success in this game.
James always laughs. He's like, "That's your guy." I was like, "That is my guy." I'm glad you talked about Keith because that's a great story. A guy that just keeps his head down, works hard, great teammate, super positive, more than me, super positive.
It'll be interesting to see if the Saints get this receiver more involved, a high character guy who has a good relationship with the quarterback. Not only Kirkwood, but Lynn Bowden Jr. was able to make some plays as well. The former John Gruden 2020 3rd-round pick.
All right, I'm excited as hell. I've wanted to coach you from the first time I met you, man.
Who is it, Brad? Raiders.
The guy was traded away from the Raiders for some character issues, but now he's having tons of success with the New Orleans Saints and with Derek Carr as his quarterback, just like what could have been in 2020. Michael Thomas and Chris Olave were not available in this game. There have been some bumps in the roads with these guys. And you saw Derek Carr finally be able to deliver the football to several different receivers. And it makes you wonder, when they're not trying to force the football to some of the star wide receivers, it seems like the Saints offense is able to perform even better. Although I think Chris Olave has been on fire lately with Derek Carr, and with him back this week, this team could be really dangerous, especially with people like Kirkwood and Lynn Bowden Jr. catching on. Michael Thomas, we know he has not been catching on. He's been a little bit of a head case for the New Orleans Saints. Even Dennis Allen was asked about his activity on Twitter just last week.
An injured player tweeting about your quarterback during the game. I ask this as respectfully as I can. Do you have a problem with that? Is at some point, do you think that player needs to be advised or whatever that that's not what should be happening?
Yeah, we'll keep that. We'll keep that in-house, but I guess I was made aware of that last night.
The guy is posting tweets criticizing Derek Carr. So I do not expect Michael Thomas back. Some people think he might come back towards the end of the season. And even though some fans who don't like the unprofessionalism of Michael Thomas, keep in mind this guy got busted for throwing a brick at a construction worker because they're parked in front of his house. There's people who don't like that, and people don't like the unprofessionalism towards Derek Carr. It still seems like Derek Carr has his arms wide open for Michael Thomas. We got this report from Nick Underhill of New Orleans Football about Carr prior to this game against the Giants buying some gifts for a lot of the wide receivers and offensive linemen. He got some Rolexes for Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, and it turns out that Michael Thomas is going to be getting a gift of his own from Derek Carr whenever Carr sees him. So even though there's been some Twitter drama that led to Michael Thomas deactivating his account, it seems like all that could be water under the bridge. Unless, of course, Derek Carr does not get him a Rolex, does not give him any nice jewelry, and maybe his gift for Michael Thomas, like I suggested on X, is gonna be a ring pop. The criticism has been tough for Derek Carr at home, being booed when they were facing the Detroit Lions, and then getting booed a little bit last week when they're facing the Carolina Panthers.
Stop that play. Exactly. The fans here are booing.
Derek Carr has dealt with Raiders fans, so this is nothing new, dealing with the passion of New Orleans Saints fans. And he talked about being booed before the game and said how he even uses that lesson with his kids.
I remember the other day, my son was, true story, he's frustrated with his math homework. He's getting really upset at it. He won't even look at the page. Like, look, son, it's okay. I'm going to start booing you right now, too. And he made him laugh.
So it was great to see Carr have a positive attitude about it, and he really changed the narrative and got all these fans who were booing him, who were saying that he was the main problem. He has now flipped him, and he had them rooting and cheering for Derek Carr during this game.
To hear the crowd cheering every touchdown, running in the tunnel, and everyone's going nuts. Derek, we love you. I was like, I've always loved you, you know.
The Giants were able to take away the deep ball, but you had Derek Carr able to connect with some of these other wide receivers like we mentioned earlier, and also the tight ends. Juwan Johnson got involved in the game, even though he had some rough patches and was dealing with injuries early in the year. And Jimmy Graham continues to get touchdowns in the red zone. The old-time veteran tight end continues to reel it in when it matters the most. Last week, Jimmy Graham celebrated a little too hard with Derek Carr, hurting his ribs, which are fractured right now.
It was after that third down catch, and he hugged me, and I felt my rib go like this. And I looked at him and said, Jimmy, I was like, please don't do that again.
But this time, however, he was aware of the situation and was able to be chill. The fans obviously boo whenever they're upset about a situation, but really the media, I feel like, has been coming after Derek Carr and has been putting all of the blame on them. And you had a lot of Saints reporters predicting that the Giants would beat the Saints. They just have no faith in this guy, and it just seems like they're so quick to dump all the problems on him. But Derek Carr has been able to maintain his cool despite all the heat coming at him. He even analogized the up and downs with the offense like a journalist.
You always want to put your best foot forward, no matter what you do. Football, you know, whether you're writing a story, you always want to put your best stuff out there. And I'm sure you all have written something and you're like, oh, wow, how was I thinking there? You know, the
journalists are not writing their best story, which is that the season is over and that the Saints have no hope. The Saints are riding high right now, and they're all going to be backtracking and back on the Derek Carr hype train. Dennis Allen seems like he's been a little sick of it, a little sick of some of these reporters and people criticizing Carr, and he backed his quarterback today. Hats off to him.
I don't know if I'm getting questions about the quarterback this week, but I thought the quarterback played really well. We'll make sure we get that on record. I just think it's unfair my personal opinion. When you play that position, you're going to get your fair share of criticism. And, when somebody plays really good, I think we need to make sure we recognize that he played well.
And I like the fact that he's doubling down right now, saying, yeah, you guys are going to ask any questions about the quarterback when he's had a great game. That is quite annoying. These people will criticize the man. They will try to take him down when he is low, when he's dealing with injuries, when he's dealing with players who are unavailable to play. But when he perseveres through all that, when he has some success, all the haters are quiet. All the media journalists are not praising the guy. Instead, it's radio silence. But in the end, for the Saints to succeed, they got to block out all that negative noise coming in at the last 3 games of the regular season.
It doesn't matter what anybody outside of this little room right here thinks, says, or does.
There's a lot of talking going on right now about this team, about that team, about this player, that player. You got to silence the noise.
Looking back at this game, we wonder how the offense got creative, got so many different guys involved. You had Derek Carr mention a man who showed up to training camp, a man who has a lawsuit against the NFL right now, and the showdown is happening January 10th. By the way, we will be giving you an update on the John Gruden showdown against the NFL happening January 10th. But Derek Carr mentioned this guy at the press conference, talked about texting him and how he would be happy about some of the plays they did today.
Happy about that play. I'm sure Gruden is watching that one somewhere. Slow go seam. He's probably fired up about that one. I'm sure I got a text from him for that one.
It seems like John Gruden is great friends with Derek Carr and still in his ear and still helping out after he helped out pro bono this past offseason. Perhaps John Gruden is more involved because the play calling, especially in this past game, looks significantly better. I had to bring up other former Raiders in this game. You had Darren Waller, who played with Derek Carr for several years, hugging it out after the game. Darren Waller also swapped jerseys with other former Raider and tight end Foster Moreau after the game. Who knows if one day these players will meet again. The Buccaneers technically have the lead for first place in the NFC South because they have that tiebreaker against the New Orleans Saints and a better divisional record, but the Falcons fell to the Carolina Panthers, so this opens the door for the division to come down between the Buccaneers and the Saints. Saints play the LA Rams on Thursday Night Football prime time, where the whole entire world will be watching. We will be watching it as well, and we are going live for every single Saints Derek Carr game this year, and also we go live for every single Raiders game and occasionally primetime games around the NFL, so I hope you check us out and react with us in real time and experience this together. But I believe the Saints are going to go 10-7 and make the playoffs. I think they could take on the Rams this Thursday. Then they go and play the Buccaneers. That's going to be a huge game for the division. And then you end off the season against the Atlanta Falcons. This team can go all the way 10-7, host a playoff game, win some playoff games, and who knows what could happen. Maybe we'll see DC4 back in Vegas for the Super Bowl. People were so quick to write this team off and write Derek Carr off because of some of the little speed bumps along the way, but it seems like the car is riding just fine. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What is going to happen to this team? Can they go all the way? My name is Wi-Fi Willie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.